time is slowly running out for me to do my best Fat Joe impression and take this starting bankroll all the way up from $2,000 to $10,000 so that I can go from playing poker here to playing poker here on a live stream under the lights. It's something I really want to make happen, but before we do that, our bankroll needs to say $10,000. It currently only says $3,265. So we've got some work to do. This is the 2K to 10K Bankroll Challenge, episode number 4. For week 4, I'm going to be playing in a home game setup. Just some guys sitting around a table playing some cards. It's where most of us got our start in poker, so it feels nice to be going back to it. We're playing 50 cent, $1. But don't let the stakes fool you. This game is action-packed. This first hand we're going over, under the gun +1, raises up to $3. There's a middle position call, a low jack call, and a high jack call. This is set up perfectly for a squeeze, and we actually have a real hand this time. When we peel pocket kings out of the big blind, we of course are going to be squeezing up to $25. I think my image in this game is fairly aggressive, so I don't expect this 3-bet squeeze to be given a lot of respect, which is perfect because this time we do actually have a hand. And it looks like the under the gun +1 raiser isn't going to be giving us too much respect, as he's in the tank and eventually he reaches back into his chip stack and puts out the 4-bet up to $60. Now he doesn't really have a lot behind, so I'm not quite sure why he didn't just go all in. It pretty quickly is going to fold back around to me, and we have pocket kings. There's really only one move to do here, and that is to say...
Ellen? Do you have aces? Really? Yeah. That's sick.
Yeah, we got snap called. We ran right into pocket aces, the ultimate cooler. Deciding how many times to run it, I say it's up to you. Eventually he decides on one time. We cut out the chips. Let's go to a flop. The window card is the ace of hearts. We're pretty much dead. The rest of the run out is totally irrelevant. We're going to lose this $190 pot here. Pretty brutal cooler, and we're stuck right away in the game. We add on for a bit more. We're in for 500 total on the session. Before we get into our next interesting hand, where we're on the button and we peel pocket 5s. Going the speed limit this hand. Middle position player raises to 4. There's a low jack caller. There is a cutoff caller. And this might be a good spot to squeeze, but on the button, I think we get to call a lot of our hands and play in position. So I elect to just call the $4. The small blind doesn't think that price is good enough. He 3-bets up to $40. This is a new player in the game. I don't have a lot of experience with him, but he typically plays slightly higher stakes and probably in a new game might be a little bit splashy. Definitely an aggressive player, so I don't necessarily think he has to have the nuts when he does this. So when it folds back to me, I think we're getting a pretty decent enough price in position. We're fairly deep, so I decide to call and set mine. We don't hit our set. Flop is Jack, Queen 3. I'm pretty much done with the hand, but the small blind chooses to check, and I check behind pretty quickly. On the board, pairing Queen of Spades, the small blind is now going to decide to lead for a third pot. He goes for 30 into about 90. And I don't know. I'm just a non-believer. Kind of strange he didn't choose to c-bet. I think he would do that with a lot of his air and a lot of his paired hands. And on the repeat queen, I just don't know if I can fold just yet. River is a blank, and he pretty quickly moves all in. So very, very weird spot here. I'm not quite sure what he's trying to represent with this bet. But let's take our time. Let's think about it. Let's break it down the way we normally do. Our pot odds here, we need to call 126 to win around 418. That means we need to be right 30% of the time or more. So let's try and break down his range. I think this hand is super interesting because his range changes so much street to street. So here's a 3-bet range that we can give him pre-flop, centered around these suited Broadway combos with pairs down to 6s, and some bluffs mixed in with the suited wheel aces, as well as some suited connectors. So if this is his range pre-flop. It changes a lot when he chooses to check the flop. So when he checks the flop, I don't think he'll do that much with overpairs or any of his queen X, really. I think the stronger hands he'll have are sets as a trap. He might check some of his weaker Jack X as well. I think his underpairs want to check, and of course his heir is going to want to check here as well. I don't think he's checking flush draws, which is why you could see his suited combos have some frequency that they are betting that flop. So if that's what he checks on the flop, when he arrives to the turn with this range, I do think he's probably going to be betting range on the turn. I think his strong hands need to start getting money in. I think his Jack X can feel comfortable that I've checked back, and he'll start some bluffs with his heir and kind of some of his gut shot, semi-bluff sort of combos. So then when he gets to the river and he chooses to go all in, pretty polarizing. I don't think he has his underpairs anymore, nor his weaker Jack X. He might be going super thin, but not all the time with his Ace Jack combos. You can pause it right now and comment down below what you think, but I just feel like if we count combos here, there's 1 combo of queens, 3 combos of jacks. You can give him 6 combos of Ace Jack offsuit and 2 combos of Ace Jack suited as played. That's 12 value combos. But if we count all his bluff combos with the Ace 10 and King 10 suited, as well as his suited connectors, I just think there's too many bluff combos. So I decide, after quite a while of thinking, to stick in the call.
Ace King, right?
No.
You have a pair?
No. You win. Oh my god! So good!
Pretty exciting one. Credit to him for going for the bluff, but at the end of the day, his story just didn't really make a lot of sense to me, and when that's the case, oftentimes tend to stick in the call. Pretty nice pot to come our way, and that's really good for our confidence going forward. Always the best feeling to be stacking some chips. So let's hope that our stack can continue to move in the right direction. As a side note, if you guys haven't already liked the video or subscribed to the channel, what more do I have to do? I just heroed off my whole stack with third pair, trying to get some content in for you guys. Come on. If you want more content, you can follow me over on Instagram at JQPoker, posting live updates there. I appreciate your support. Back to the poker. This next hand, we peel pocket kings in middle position. There's a $1 button straddle on. Small blind's going to call, as is the under the gun player. Typical raise size in this game is maybe to about $3. So with the dead money, we maybe should be going to 5 or 6. I decided to go really big to 11 here. Just trying to make it look a little bit fishy. Like I'm trying to squeeze a little bit of dead money out there. See if anybody will do anything a little bit weird, but everybody's pretty much in line here. The small blind does call though, so we're heads up to a flop with 24 in the middle, which comes out Queen, Jack, 8. On this 2 Broadway card texture of a flop, I think I should be either checking or going large in position. I think it's silly to check, so I probably should be betting 66%. As played, I go for a little under half pot, don't love it. He calls, we're heads up to a turn, which is the 7 of clubs. I decide to overbet this turn, something that I'm trying to mix in. I don't know if it really works in this scenario because I do have the king of clubs, so don't really have to be worried about the backdoor so much. This will block a lot of hands like king queen, king jack. There might be some continues, but he pretty quickly folds. We're going to scoop medium-sized pot. He later told me that he had ace 10 of diamonds for the backdoor draw on the flop and the gut shot, so I guess a good thing we didn't make a set on the turn there. But we'll take it. Moving on to the next one. This next hand we're going to pick up in progress. We are in middle position and we're going to raise it up to $3 with a mystery hand. It folds around to the low jack, who puts in the 3-bet, 4x up to $12. So this is a fairly large 3-bet size, and we are in fairly early position, so this is actually probably a pretty strong hand from the low jack. We've been getting monsters all night. When it folds back around to us, we're going to reach back into our chip stack and put in the 4-bet up to $40. Don't think we have to go super large with the 4-bet. We go straight 3x because we're out of position. In position, we might even go a little bit smaller. But he pretty quickly makes the call. So let's peel the cards. Let's see what monster we have this time. We've had pocket kings a couple times. Would be nice to have them again here. maybe even aces, ace king. Oh, we have 7 deuce. The 7 deuce game's on. So if you win a hand with the worst hand in poker, each player at the table has to pay you $1. Last player to fold pays you 2. I use a standard 20% c-bet size in 4-bet pots as the pre-flop aggressor. I do this with aces, kings, queens here, so I'm going to do it with a bluff. I bet $20. He pretty quickly calls. Hoping for kind of a scary turn. Not really with the 9 of spades, but we're in too deep now. We can't just give up. So we're going to put in a large bet here and hope for a fold. We stick out $75, and he pretty quickly says,
Oh. Does he have 75?
Oh, so.
How much is it? I think I'm drawing debt. How much?
18.
I mean, I think I'm dead, Bunny, but I have so much in there. You're good. You're good. Oh my God, you're ahead.
I absolutely cannot believe it when he turns over Jack 10 of spades. We are behind, but somehow not drawing dead. We do run the river 3 times, but I'm not going to waste your time, guys. The first river is the ace of diamonds. We don't make a pair on the other 2 either. Still kind of in shock that I didn't win the pot pre-flop with the 4-bet and didn't take it down with a c-bet either. Kind of a crazy float on the flop and definitely a crazy call pre-flop. Let me know in the comments who's a bigger donkey, me for bluffing off my stack or him for calling with Jack 10. Either way, we lose a pretty big one. For this next hand, we have ace of diamonds, jack of spades, and a hijack. There's a $1 button straddle on. The big blind limps, as does the under the gun player. Sign of a good game. Ace jack off performs well enough from late position, so we're going to raise it up. I decided to go to $6, a little bit larger because of the limpers. The cutoff and button both snap call the $6 raise, so I don't think they're ever really going to have super strong hands as they might consider raising, so when the flop comes 8-8 jack, I think it's pretty good for us. Again, I don't think we're ever getting trapped by better. Obviously, the counter to this is if they're calling really quickly, they might have a suited connector hands that are centered around some 8x. But with 2 of the 8s out there, I'm not really super worried, so I decided to bet small. I go for $6 into 20. Cutoff pretty quickly calls, and the button comes along as well. So we're 3 ways to a turn, which is the 4 of diamonds. I decide to slow down and check here. This is partially for pot control and also to let them bluff on the river. When the river is another jack, I'm not quite sure how I feel about this card. On one hand, we're beating 8x combos now, but I do expect them to bet that on the turn. So when the button bets 25, I honestly think we're just going to be chopping with worse jacks here. Not really in love with it. Not really any point in raising. I don't know if 8x calls and don't really want to run into slow played quads or anything. So I decided to just put in the call. The cutoff thinks about it for a while before folding. We turn over the ace jack and we're good. The button was running some sort of bluff, so pretty nice that we got probably the max out of a weak portion of button's range there. Either way, we drag a medium-sized pot, and our stack's going back up in the right direction. Unfortunately, at this point of the night, my phone was on low battery, so I had to charge it away from the table, so I missed about 30 minutes of hands, and there were some pretty decent ones. I won a few small pots. My stack is climbing in the right direction. I actually got bluffed crazy out of a would have been $600 pot if I had clicked call by a 2x overbet shove on the river, so credit to him for going for it. But unfortunately, I don't have the hand. I might go over it in a upcoming video for hand reviews because it is a very interesting spot. I've been running it by a lot of people, doing a lot of solver work with it. It is very, very interesting hand, I think. But nevertheless, probably about an hour after the last hand when we pick up our next hand. So we're playing slightly shorter handed. It's later in the night. Some people are stuck trying to get involved into some pots. And that dynamic plays a role in this next hand. For this next hand, we are in the big blind. There's a button straddle on for $1. And the small blind folds, so we're going to be first to act here. We raise it up to $3, which we're going to be doing with a pretty strong range. And you can see we peel pocket aces here. The strongest hand that you can have pre-flop. So we're loving this spot, especially when the under the gun player decides to 3-bet up to $8. We're loving life here, especially even more so when the cutoff puts in the cold call. So when the button gets out of the way and it's back on us, we're of course going to be putting in the 4-bet. Not much merit here to trap so deep stacked and out of position. In position, a little bit shorter. I do like a flat with aces sometimes, but not in this configuration. People don't like to fold. It's late in the night. They want to put their money in, so we make it pretty large for the 4-bet, up to $45. The player to our right asks to sweat. I tell him to hold on because the cards are probably going to be on their backs in a minute anyways. Under the gun doesn't take too long before calling the 4-bet. And then the cutoff ships his stack in. So I'm not quite sure, was the cutoff trapping with a hand that's strong like kings or something like that, or maybe just has jacks and wants to flip with ace king. We get a count. He has about $140 in his stack. The under the gun player doesn't have much more. He's about $175 effective, so we're of course announcing that we're all in for a 6-bet shove. I can only assume this is a pretty gross spot for the under the gun player. He probably has a hand like queens or maybe jacks. He's trying to get some face time for the vlog, maybe get a read. And he pretty quickly starts talking.
Jake, you as king. I'm alive against king.
Bad read, dude. I do not have kings. It sounds like he's thinking about calling with a hand like ace king or ace queen suited. And while this spot, a 6-bet shove, is never bluffed, even by the best players, honestly, it is still hard to fold a hand like ace king, especially when you're stuck and maybe a little bit steaming. Like I mentioned, it's late in the night. Might not be too many more spots like this to get your money in and maybe get unstuck. So while this is probably still a fold with anything other than aces, it is still a tough spot. And eventually he says,
There's only one way unstoppable, and it's making bad calls.
Oh wow, that's pretty
Oh no, that's
that is the worst case scenario.
we're up against pocket sevens from the cutoff and a mystery hand from the end of the gun player. Just need to fade a 7 to win a huge pot, and the flop comes 3 ace 3. Board runs out with a backdoor club draw. The under the gun actually makes a backdoor flush.
Whoa, you got there!
That's not cool.
No, he didn't.
Which of course is no good. Our full house is going to scoop in this nearly $500 pot. For this next hand, we are on the button, and it folds around to us. We're going to be opening a lot from the button. So we reach into our stack, we put out 3 white chips and raise to $3. The small blind puts in 3 white chips to call. We look down at Jack 10 of hearts as the big blind puts in 3 chips, but they're not quite the same color as ours.
I honestly thought these were whites. Do you want me to leave them out?
You can take them back if you want.
No. Oh, I mean, they already are.
As you could hear, the big blind maybe trying to angle us a little bit. He's known to do that from time to time. So I think he actually has a pretty strong hand when he does this. Either way, we go 3 ways to a flop with the small blind betting $3 in the dark. It comes out deuce 5-5 with 2 hearts. It's great for us. The big blind's having none of it. He raises to 21. We're of course going to call with our heart draw. And the small blind gets out of the way, heads up to a turn with about 90 in the middle, which is the bink 7 of hearts. We make our flush. Big blind checks to us. We're going to start getting value here. Also trying to deny equity from hands containing the ace, king, or queen of hearts. We could go a little bit bigger here. In game, I went too small. I go for 15 to 90. I think this should probably be larger, like 70 maybe. try and go for 2/3, but the big blind's gonna call, hoping for no heart, and it's not. It's the jack of clubs. If the flush wasn't enough, we hit top pair as overkill. The big blind checks to us. We go for 105. Again, this is too small. I think this should be like 145, 150 range, but he doesn't think too long before sticking in the call. We turn over our flush. It's the best hand. We're going to scoop a pretty massive pot. As we suspected, the big blind looks down at his hand, indicating he had a pretty strong one. He shows the player in the 3 seat before he tells us.
Congrats, bro. You said aces. Okay,
Is it really?
He says he has aces. I believe him. Unfortunate for him, but we're going to scoop a nearly $400 pot as we make our way to the Uppaton Peninsula, hoping that we can keep our stack moving in the right direction and finish the night out strong. Moving on to our last interesting hand of the night, we have pocket 10s in the cutoff. There's a $2 button straddle on. We've made some strong hands, but we're yet to flop a set, so looking to change that here. It folds around to us. We're going to raise it up to $5, 2.5x the button straddle, and we pretty quickly get 3-bet to $17. This is a pretty wide configuration, so I don't expect him to be strong all the time. This player's also stuck and not afraid to get involved. I considered 4-betting, but trying to keep his range wide. Decide to call. Gonna go heads up to a flop, which comes bink jack 10-4. I check it over to him. He decides to go for $15 into 35. I don't know if I like a call here better to try and keep his bluffs in, but this is a player that's not afraid to float flops either. So I decide to check raise up to $50. Retrospect, maybe I can just flat, like I said, to keep his bluffs in, but again, this player not afraid of facing a check raise, so he calls. Pot's getting a little bit bigger as the turn comes the deuce of spades. I decide to play a strange line here and go for the check, trying to make it look like I've given up. Like I was trying to steal the pot, maybe from an ace-king, ace-queen type hand on the flop, and now I've given up. So I check. And he's actually going to check back pretty quickly here. When the ace of spades hits the river, I'm hoping he floated with a hand like ace-king, maybe even a hand as strong as ace-jack. Might bet the turn though, so when I bet half pot, he pretty quickly folds. We're going to take down a pretty sizable one. He'd later tell me he had pocket 9s, so I think we might have gotten the max there. But always nice to scoop the last significant pot of the night. It's time to count up our chips, do a pseudo rack up, and see how we did. Just finished a session, in for 500, out for 1203. So profit of $700 and some change. Pretty good, kind of a crazy session, long one, 7-hour session, I think. Started off stuck running aces and kings into aces rather. Then went back with the bluff catch hand when I had 5s, kind of a crazy one there. Then I punted my stack off with 7 deuce. Yeah, and then it was just kind of weird trying to wait for spots. Had aces cracked, it was a weird one. Played a couple hands tricky, maybe could have won some more money. Twice I could have gotten ace-king in pre against queens, but the first time there was an open and a 3-bet and I just mucked, and the second time I flatted to trap and he was also trapping queens and ace-high board, so we didn't really get much money in. So kind of a weird one there. But yeah, overall good session, happy with the way I played. I don't remember if I got, there's a huge hand I played with pocket 6s, where the guy bluff shoved the river for 2x pot. It was like a $280 shove into a $150 pot that I kind of felt like he was bluffing, but I felt like I had better hands to call with as played. So I just mucked. He definitely was bluffing, but it is what it is. You know, could have made some more money, maybe $350, $400 more, but Really happy with the way I played. Pretty solid. Didn't get out of line in too many spots other than the 7 deuce hand, which you guys will definitely have seen. But yeah, happy with the way I played. And yeah, it's nice little chunk of change to add to the bankroll challenge. Good to continue momentum from this weekend, from last episode's tournament cash. Yeah, feeling good, playing good. And that's all I have to say about that. Thanks for watching, guys, and good luck at the tables.
So with that, our bankroll has spun up from $3,265 at the start of the episode all the way to $3,968. Still a long ways to go. We're approaching the halfway mark. Of course, progress is not linear. We can lose some money, but not bad. At the end of the week, we jump into a second session in the cash game streets, and this one was pretty weird. I played for a little bit over 2 hours. Probably V-pipped 2 or 3 hands, but they were pretty important ones. I don't have any video for you guys, but I'll walk you through the first one where I have pocket queens. We are in the small blind. There's 2 limpers and the cutoff raises up to $15. The button calls. I 3-bet on the larger side to $80. One of the limpers cold calls, and so does the cutoff. Button gets out of the way, as does the other limper. We're going to be 3 ways to a flop with 260 in the middle. Now I only have $175 behind, so pretty important flop. Hoping to see no aces or kings. Obviously a set would be nice, but we don't get it. We get a flop of 8-4-4 rainbow. Action starts on me, and if one of them is calling a 3-bet with a 4 pre-flop, or if they have pocket 8s, power to them. They're going to get all my money. I stick in the rest. The limper thinks about it for a while before calling, and eventually the cutoff calls as well. So not really sure what we need to fade, but the turn is the king of diamonds. On the surface, maybe not a great card, but I'm not sure that they will call my shove with hands that weren't already better than mine, like pocket kings, for example, that contain a king. I think they probably fold the flop for ace king, or king queen is hard to have for them as well. So all in all, feeling decent about that card. And I honestly really like the river when the river is the 4 of hearts, making it much less likely that somebody else had a 4. The initial limper turns over pocket 6s. Those are no good. I roll over my queens, and the cutoff mucks. So we're going to scoop a nearly $800 pot there. Pretty nice one. Kind of speculative calls from them pre-flop, but we'll take it. The last hand I play of the night is a pretty interesting one. There's a $4 button straddle on. The big blind limps, and I peel ace of spades, jack of spades, and the low jack. When it folds to me, I make it $20. The hijack to my left 3-bets to a super small size. It makes it $45. The cutoff cold calls, the big blind limper calls, and when it's back on me, I'm getting a great price with a hand that could pretty easily make the nuts. So I decide to stick in the call. We go 4 ways in a pot that's $185. And the flop is one that I could pretty easily go broke on. It is 8-4 deuce with 2 spades. We have 2 overcards and the nut flush draw. The big blind and I check and flow to the initial raiser, who actually decides to check. So a little bit interesting here. And the cold caller and the cutoff decides to bet $100 now. The big blind pretty quickly goes all in for less. He has about 85 in front of him, and it's back on me. The cutoff's range when he cold calls is a lot of middling pairs like 7s through jacks. While he could have top set here, I think it's slightly more likely he's betting a weak overpair for some protection / equity denials. With this said, I think if we raise, the cutoff is always just going to go with those pairs. I don't know if I really want to be flipping, as we are both fairly deep. I also am kind of concerned that the initial 3-better might be sandbagging a hand like aces or kings and looking for the check shove. So I decide to just flat. The initial raiser gets out of the way. So we're going to be 3 ways to a turn with a main pot of $440 and a side pot of $30. As a side note, the big blind limper, who's all in for less, just busted a tournament in which he cashed, so he's kind of on winner's tilt. He's splashing around a bit, not super concerned that he has a strong hand, more concerned about what the cutoff has. And when the turn comes out the ace of hearts, I'm feeling fairly good because we are beating a lot of his overpairs now. Again, even if he has top set, we're still very live for a spade to come. So I check it over to him again, and he bets now pretty large for 350. Now, while this is a large bet, and maybe should lean him sort of towards a polarized range, I don't know if he knows that when he bets this size, he's saying that he has a very strong hand. I only have 600 total behind. If I call the turn, I don't think there's any cards in the river which I can fold. I think this is a pretty clear all-in or fold spot. After a long time, come to the decision that the cutoff could easily be continuing the turn with hands like jacks or tens or even maybe nines. So after a while, I announce that I'm all in for about 250 more, and it doesn't take the cutoff long at all to fold his cards. So pretty interesting one. He mutters something about me hitting the ace, which, good read, I did. The big blind flips over his cards. He has queen 8 offsuit, so pretty loose one, but technically got his money in good against me. The cutoff says he had better than queen 8, so I think probably 9s or 10s. The river is a blank. We are going to scoop a nearly $850 pot. And pretty quickly after that, tables were breaking, and I decided, since I was pretty card dead other than those two spots, decided to rack up and call it a night.
Wow. What you guys just saw was kind of a hit and run session, was played for maybe 2-3 hours. I V-pipped only 4 hands, but got some really clean runouts, as you guys saw. In for 300, out for 1260. Pretty crazy, but we'll take it. It's nice to be running pretty good this week with the home game and with this one as well. We'll take it.
With that, our bankroll has gone from 3,968 all the way up to 4,928. We're almost there to the halfway mark, but not celebrating yet. We've been running pretty good. Poker is a game rooted in skill, but bound by a lot of variance. So we'll have to keep rolling with the punches, trying to play our best, and hopefully we can continue to spin. Thank you for watching.